Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rich Doc, Poor Doc. And today, we thought we would talk about our real estate journey and why we chose real estate as our vehicle for achieving financial freedom. So maybe we will start out with.
You tell your story of how
Oh,
you
you
got
want me to
into
tell
real
me my
estate in
story?
the
Okay.
first place. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. I guess that's true. I started out in real estate a lot. Earlier than you did. And so I kind of grew up with real estate. My dad and my mom, they bought rental properties. So I remember as a little kid going around and, actually my dad would be collecting rents or, checking out the properties. So, I remember that very distinctly. Uh, and, um, and so that I think, I didn't really understand obviously the finances of it. Looking back, it's fun to kind of think about the time when they were investing like really high interest rates, nothing like what we're experiencing now. But that was back in the day when it was like 15% or something like that, crazy interest rates. And now we're at what, 3 and 4%. So it's just a very, very different world, but fun to kind of think about, what they went through. But again, I didn't have any insight around that.
But you did see them suffering, right? Because they
It's
put everything
true.
on 15-year loans. And so that didn't color your vision of what it meant to be in real estate.
No, that's true. Yeah, I mean, they did. No, but I didn't really see them suffering, right?
Okay.
I think yeah, I didn't really understand what was going on there. But what I saw was after the 15 years, right? I saw them have multiple properties that were paid off, bringing in, really nice cash flow, right? So, and my parents were very hands off, so they, hardly did anything with their properties. So, property manager just managed their properties entirely. So yeah, I saw the whole passive nature of real estate. Also, I guess just going around and looking at properties, I grew to love the idea of owning something like land and I think actually one other thing that I think that had a real impact on me was my background is Japanese, and so I remember back in the day, like Japan was like the leading economy or the fastest growing, right? And they were buying a lot of property in the U.S. So I always remember that kind of colored my vision. I was like, oh wow, like we need to take that back. We need to kind of like we need to own the real estate. We can't let you know the Japanese, even though I was Japanese, we can't let the Japanese own all this property,
Huh.
this valuable real estate. We need to take that back. So maybe that kind of colored my vision as well. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah,
And your parents were mostly investing in student housing.
that's right. Yeah, so it was near university. It was like these houses that they would house like 10 students in a house. So yeah, so and that was that. I think that actually, looking back now, thinking about it, made it probably really lucrative. I probably had really great cash flow from those properties. Obviously, they have great cash flow now because they don't have a mortgage on those properties. But even back in the day, they probably made the numbers work because they were doing student housing.
And two things that I think that I've heard from you over the years is number one, I think I heard that they did things on 15-year loans,
Yep, that's right.
which meant that they weren't necessarily cash flowing in the beginning.
Right.
That was really, really stressful for them. And so I think that's always affected your vision of the 15-year versus the 30-year loan
Right. It's true.
discussion. And so that's I think part of the reason that we're really into 30-year mortgages instead of 15 years, because it just gives you that flexibility. You make sure you're always cash flowing when there is a downturn like there is now, that you have that flexibility to not have these huge mortgage payments that you're paying out every single month. And then the other thing I heard from you was that your parents didn't really know what they were doing.
Right. Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. So I didn't necessarily learn from that when I first started. So I started almost 20 years ago now, and when I got started, I did actually start with a rental property, and we I invested with a friend of mine, and we did think about it in terms of cash flow, but we were happy with kind of a cash flow neutral situation where we weren't really putting money in our pocket every month. We were kind of banking on appreciation, and then from there, for the next all the way up to 2008, for the next 8 years. my friend and I were investing in raw land. I also bought several expensive condos, none of which cash flowed. And so I was just playing the appreciation game, and there was a really nice run from 2013, 2014 to right about the, oh, sorry, 2004, 2005 to 2008 when the market crashed. There was a really nice run of appreciation for those that were investing back then. Will remember this, where you could literally buy a piece of land for 125,000 and sell it not even a year later for over 325,000, so over $200,000 in appreciation. And there were no improvements made to the land, nothing. It was just pure appreciation. And then the market crash happened. And
Wait, I want to interrupt because I remember you telling me like you would actually go and buy a property and you would end up walking away with money,
right,
like
right.
after the loans. So the loans were crazy then too.
Right, yeah. So there was kind of like you may have seen it in the movie The Big Short, but there were kind of like no income verification. You could actually do you can get money back, right? So you could you can actually easily get 100% loan on these deals, right? Where you literally have zero money down on a deal. And again, you didn't have to have the income verification. And I was doing those ARMs, which is adjustable rate mortgages, which expired in 3 years, right, or 5 years. And so that also caused problems for me because right around 2011, or if I got a loan in 2007, let's say around 2010, that's when the ARMs would run out, and I would have to. There would be a big balloon payment, and I had to essentially go back to the banks and negotiate and figure out. They were like, well, obviously I can't pay, this whole loan amount off, so I had to come up with some new financing terms with them. So yeah, it was a really tough period. It took me probably until we got together for me to kind of get out from all that. I mean, it took it until about 2013, 2014 for the market to recover enough for me to, to at least for the condos in Seattle, we were able to sell those and maybe make a little bit of a
I
profit.
think we sold those in 2012 or
Yeah,
2013.
maybe 2012, 2013, things recovered right around then. And also the land. I remember even in 2020, actually the last land that we owned was, I just saw our last land in 2018,
18.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and we still sold it at a huge
a
loss. I
huge
mean, tell
loss.
the story of like
Yeah, so I think I bought that one probably around 2004. Let's say it was 125,000, and over the years paid mortgage and property taxes on that land all the way up to 2018. So 14 years later, I think the loan was by then 65,000 or so, and we sold that for 50,000. So I actually had to come to the table with money. So that was very, very painful to have to do that. But it was worth it just to get out of it after 14 years and not have to keep paying the mortgage on that thing.
and
And
what a
so
valuable lesson to have learned
for sure.
for both of us, right? I didn't have to go through that pain,
Right.
but boy, that pain kind of really teaches you the lesson not to apply appreciation, no matter how sexy it is, because it
Right.
really is sexy, right? To buy a property and it's 150,000, and then 6 months later to sell it for 250, right? And just get that really easy money. It's really something that's so easy, I think, to get sucked into because it's exciting. Whereas maybe buying a 1970s duplex cash flowing rentals it's not as sexy,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I could talk to my younger self, I would have definitely advised that, even though, yeah, the appreciation is pretty exciting. If I had just invested in kind of solid cash flowing properties in working class areas, not like, high end areas, but just, just solid working class neighborhoods. Like, so here in Seattle, you have, Boeing up north of Seattle in a area called Everett. And there's some really nice communities around there, just solid working class. a lot of Boeing factory workers. And yeah, that would have been a great place to invest because right now those areas are doing really well. And yeah, the cash flow in those areas are really, 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 really nice. So yeah, some good lessons there. But I think it's the foundation of what we've since developed. And
Mm-hmm.
even, and so I say, for 14 years, I was doing these appreciation plays and really, I'd say treading water, right? Not really like building wealth, just kind of treading water. And really it was just in the last 5 years, we did more in those 5 years than, I did in those 14 years. And so yeah, huge difference when you have the right strategy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. So maybe let's tell them a little bit of a story of how we got into real
sure,
estate
go ahead.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Kenji and I got together, I mean, one of the first things we connected on was we both loved property and we both love owning land. But even despite that, we never even talked about investing in real estate together really for the first couple of years of us being together. It was only after we got married and then we were taking this trip through New Zealand where I happened to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad for the first time. Kenji had read it previously and it had affected him, but when I started reading it, I got so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to be an investor. I don't want to be, working all the time, just trading time for money. And we actually read it out loud to each other, which I think is really, really powerful because each sentence we could stop and we could talk and we could plan and we could get really excited. And so it became a shared vision together of where we were going and why we were going that way, rather than just one of us kind of pulling along the other person. We were both completely aligned because of that reading it out loud.
Yeah, I think it's really important. For me, I think it was having that partner, right, who is kind of like on the same team, kind of rowing the boat in the same direction. It's really hard to get anywhere if somebody is rowing in the opposite direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw a post about this in our Facebook group about somebody saying that their spouse nixed a deal, and even though they were really excited about it, it was a really good deal. And yeah, it's really hard to make progress unless you're both on the same page. So I think having read it together and also having had a chance to kind of talk through why real estate, what's our strategy going to be, what are our goals, right, and what is the reason why we're doing all this, right? Because we had to make sacrifices actually in the early years to really grow as quickly as we did. And if you don't have that strong reason for doing it, it's sometimes hard to make progress. And I think actually that would be a good thing to kind of segue to. I mean, let's talk about kind of our kind of the importance of the why and the goals, and kind of and kind of how that really kind of, I think, pulled us to where we are right now.
Yeah, definitely. So just stepping back 1 second is that, yeah, we did have to make sacrifices along the way. I remember even talking like, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a new car versus we'll take that same money and use it to buy a duplex that's going to cash flow for us. And when you're both aligned on that decision making, those kind of decisions become very, very clear, and you can just move forward instead of debating it, over time and wasting time and energy.
This episode is brought to you by Dan Peck of Caliber Home Loans. If you're an experienced investor, you'll know just how important it is to have a lender who knows how to work with investors. Now, we've been working with Dan and his team for over 5 years now, and he's our go-to whenever we need a residential loan for our investment properties. Now, if you're new to investing, you might not know this, but your lender can sometimes be the difference between getting a great deal or completely missing out on it because your lender couldn't close the deal. Now, I did want to point out that Dan can help you not only with your investment properties, but also if you're looking to buy a primary residence or vacation home. So the next time you're looking for a residential lender, be sure to email Dan at semiretiredmd@caliberhomeloans.com to get a free consultation. Also wanted to give a shout out to Tyler Kerlee of Path Insurance Solutions for being a sponsor of the show. Tyler is who we go to for all of our insurance needs. We first started working with Tyler when we bought our first investment property, and since then, he has not only helped us insure all of our investment properties, he's also helped us with our personal insurance needs as well. Tyler's an invaluable member of our team for our investment properties because he's so knowledgeable And he also finds you the best policies without breaking the bank. So the next time you need insurance, be sure to reach out to Tyler at pathins.com. Now back to the show.
So yeah, one of the things I think that really helped Kenji and I was we had a clear vision of where we were going and why. And so we had talked probably about 6 months before our trip to New Zealand about what we wanted our lives to look like. And we had really laid out a clear vision. I think we should definitely talk about that vision and that process at some point in a different podcast, because I think it's more of a long conversation, but I do think that having that vision of where we're going to go and how much money it was going to take us to get there allowed us to move forward together really, really fast compared to what we would have been able to do.
For sure. Yeah. And so, so like, and when I was saying, a strong why pulls you, right.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like, if you're trying to push something up a hill, it's, or to kind of push somebody along, it's a lot of effort, rather than something else pulling you up. Right. And so I think that's the difference, is that it's a lot less effort if something's pulling you up. And that's why if you have a really strong reason, making those sacrifices, like, okay, we're not going to, buy a nice, a Tesla or something, let's say, right.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we're going to use that, money to invest. It makes it so much easier. Or, cutting out Starbucks would be another one, buying a coffee machine, cutting out Starbucks,
Right. And I had to get rid of my Nordstrom card. That was
right,
all
that's
part
right.
of this, right?
That's
I
right,
had
exactly.
like a certain level. I got invited to like the Nordstrom parties at Christmas time because I spent enough money at Nordstrom. It was crazy.
Right,
I had to give up my Nordstrom card, or I chose to give up my Nordstrom card,
that's
is
right.
a better way to say it, because I knew what we were working towards. And we hear from a lot of students sometimes is we hear, well, like, it's so much work to do this. There's so much energy and effort into learning this whole new system with real estate investing. But it's like, if you know where you're going, like, is having financial freedom 5 years from now worth that energy and effort? And for me, it was like, a Tesla or my Nordstrom card, like, who cares? Like, I want financial freedom. I want the choice to live the life I want to live. And so that was a very, very clear thing that just kind of immediately made us take action. So we did take immediate action, and we came back from this trip. That was a December trip over Christmas break. We came back. We had been looking for a primary residence with a primary residence kind of realtor, and we had been putting in offers in Seattle area and just getting outbid. And that was such life happening for us that we just couldn't get these multiple houses that we were bidding for. So when we came back, we said, "Hey, we're real estate investors now. We don't want a primary residence." And so then we, took what we had learned on our trip, and then also drew on Kenji's experience, and just started looking for rental real estate properties around north and south of Seattle.
Yeah, well, there's another sacrifice, right? Giving up the dream of having a primary residence,
Mm-hmm.
and then just essentially living in rental properties since. And we've even sacrificed and lived in a duplex, right? We house hacked
Mm-hmm.
as well. So yeah. Anyway,
Those will be good stories when
that'd be
we're
another
older.
for another. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, we definitely want to talk about our house hacking experience
Yeah.
sometime too. But yeah, let's maybe talk about real estate and some of the benefits of real estate, because I think we could have chosen a lot of different paths. We could have chosen to invest in stocks or syndications, or but we chose to invest in rental properties, so cash flowing rental properties. So maybe I don't know if you want to kind of walk them through what are the benefits of real estate. Why is it such an amazing vehicle for achieving financial freedom quickly?
Yeah. So quickly is the key word here. Is we decided we wanted to achieve financial freedom in the order of years so that we could start living the life we wanted immediately instead of waiting until we were 65. So
Not waiting decades.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so certainly, I mean, I think the stock market, right, it goes down, it goes up, but ultimately over time, it generally goes up. But for us, we didn't want to live that life when we were 65. We wanted to live it now. And so that's why we chose real estate. Besides our underlying passion for real estate, we really realized that was the way to grow our wealth the fastest, basically. So the reason is you make money in real estate so many different ways. Number one most powerful thing, I think, is leverage. Because when you put money in the stock market, you're only making money on that money you put in. But in real estate, you make money on the bank's money that they loan you as well. And we can talk through the details of that. But I think the leverage part was a big part of it because we didn't have that much money at that point. And so we knew that we wanted to grow fast. We were going to have to use some element of leverage. Second of all, we wanted cash flow. So you can certainly get dividends from the stock market. But what we wanted to do was do what we read Robert Kiyosaki had done in Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is like, let's say he wants a whatever car, he'll go out and he'll buy several buildings and get that cash flow and then buy the car, right? And then that cash flow just keeps coming every single year. And so we realized we really wanted like a stream of cash flow that was going to be able to support our lifestyles so we could work in medicine as much as we wanted to. And so then at that point, once we built up that cash flow, we were going to also be able to purchase whatever we wanted. And so for us, it was the cash flow. And then over time, we actually realized there were all these other benefits. I mean, we kind of knew about the tax benefits, but we didn't really know about real estate professional tax status when we first started. So we didn't really realize the intensity of the tax benefits. And we'll have to do a whole podcast on real estate professional. But just roughly, we basically got this tax status by having Kenji cut back at work and buying enough properties that we could meet criteria for it. And it really allowed us to basically eliminate our federal income tax and to grow our wealth fairly rapidly that way. And then there's this thing called forced appreciation, which I don't think we also realized the power of initially, but that's taking properties and rehabbing them and increasing the value of them and increasing that cash flow that comes out of them, and then being able to refinance and take that money and go buy something else, which just increases your velocity of growth because you are using that same money over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. And then there's also the debt pay down, which which is what that means is that your renters are paying your mortgage payments, and therefore every time you make a mortgage payment, you're decreasing the debt, and then you're increasing your equity that you have in it. And it's not money you see, but it's money that you are actually accumulating over time. That is something that's kind of a benefit that you get when you sell. I think in terms of the appreciation we were just talking about, you can pull out money certainly, but you can also do something called a 1031 exchange, which is another tax advantage way of taking all that appreciation and then buying a bigger property tax deferred, right? So you're not paying taxes at that time. You're going to pay taxes sometime way in the future when you sell that last property and you don't buy another property, right? And so when you can grow your wealth tax deferred, just like a 401k, then you can grow your wealth a lot quicker.
Right. And then, of course, there's market appreciation, which is great if it happens. We never bet on market appreciation. We always buy properties that cash flow. But when we do have market appreciation, for example, we had a couple single family homes that we bought in Spokane about 2 years ago for about 150,000 each of them. And then we ended up selling them for somewhere between 230 and 240, both of them about 2 years later. That's market appreciation. That's nothing we specifically did, except we did add a bedroom in one of them. It's great. It's icing on the cake, and that's money in our pocket, tax deferred, right? We use 1031s. We just rolled them over, and that's money that's now working for us, making money for us in another cash flowing rental. So that does add to our net worth is market appreciation. And then there's rent appreciation. And that's just the amount you can increase your rents every single year on your properties.
I think one other thing I love about the rental property space is that, there are many more things you can do in terms of cash flow. So you don't have to just rent to regular tenants. You could actually potentially rent to a program called supported living, which is what we do, which is we rent to people with intellectual disabilities, and it's actually really cool because you're not only providing housing for this vulnerable population, but it's also relatively recession proof. It's state and federally funded, and therefore it doesn't matter what's going on with the economy. It's that population is going to continue to get money for rent, which then they pay to us. So that's one example. And then another one is that converting a house into an Airbnb would be another example of something you can do to increase your cash flow. So just like a lot of different options for these properties that we buy. So
Yeah.
I just really think it's a really, really great way to grow your wealth.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It allows you to be creative, I think, in
for
a way
sure.
that we hadn't really ever been able to be creative before,
True.
in thinking of ways to make our properties perform even better, or to see all this potential in properties that we didn't own yet, and to be able to purchase them and then grow them into that potential. So one last quick point before we wrap this up. So, one thing I think that Kenji especially has a ton of experience in is being an entrepreneur. And so I wanted to just address why real estate versus being an entrepreneur, because I think there are a lot of benefits that real estate has over being an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And I think it's really important to outline that. So I'll
sure.
start, or
Okay.
do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I can start. So, I think if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the cash flow quadrant, there's being a business owner and investor. That's really kind of where you want to be. And so let's think about the business owner, right? You have a lot of options. You can start your own business. You can go buy a franchise. Or you can go start a rental business, and we really think about our rental properties as a business. And the reason why we really like rental properties is that the systems for operating these rentals is already in place. The product is already well understood by people, right? I mean, like, think about if you're creating a new widget, you have to educate everybody about how to use the widget or what the widget's for. Well, everybody knows what a rental property is for, right? It's to live in. So that the product is very clear. The systems are in place. Even the jobs, right? Think about property management, contractors, all the people that are going to help you run the business already exist. You don't have to train anybody new. They know what they're doing. And so if you think about it, it's like having a franchise, but there's so many passive natures, passive aspects of owning rental properties, and on top of that, the tax benefits, right, are far greater for a rental property than a franchise or any other business. So I
Right.
think those are some reasons why real estate as a business is really a great way to build wealth.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think the only other thing is risk. I think the risk
Right.
is much, much lower in cash flowing rentals than in starting a new business. Because a common thing that Tony Robbins says at his events is 96% of businesses are closed in 10 years.
Right.
And rental properties, I mean, there's a whole system like Kenji mentioned, and people have been doing this for generations. And you are really hedging your bets by making sure there's cash flow coming in all the time instead of banking on that appreciation. And so I think it's a lot less risk and a lot more stable over time as well.
Yeah, I would love to see that statistic of if you just kind of take all the rental property owners, right? People who have rental property businesses, and see what the failure rate is for that group compared to, what you're talking about, which is like if you look at all the entrepreneurs who are starting up
Mm-hmm.
businesses, 96% failure rate, right? Within, I think it was like 5 years or something like that, right? And so, but if you look at rental property owners, I would bet that, there's probably a much lower failure rate. I still think there's actually a fairly high failure rate, and the reason is that most people don't know what they're doing, right?
Right.
They
They're going
just
completely uneducated,
completely
just gambling, like making blind decisions. It's crazy.
right.
So,
We
I
see it
mean,
all
that
the time. Yeah,
we definitely see that all the time. Okay.
right.
Well, this is a long episode already. So I think we wrap it up. Remember to subscribe to Rich Doc, Poor Doc, and join us every single week here to hear more about the mindset and strategies that make people rich docs compared to poor docs.